And I want to talk to you about the David Brat, Eric Cantor race in Virginia, because I want you to understand what that really means and how it relates to what we did here in Ohio. And I'm also going to give you some inside baseball in that race, because a lot of the media had a lot of misinformation. But what we learned in the 5 years we've been doing this is that we have the problems we have on the border today. We have the problems we have in our states, in our cities, in our townships today, because the electoral process has been hijacked. And it's been hijacked by special interests who basically have raised the cost of running for office to keep the common person out of office. And we've exposed, and we've tried to expose that that's a ruse, that it's not true, that it was contrived so that you wouldn't even try to run for office. And it's worked very well for them. And that's why we're in the situation we're in. And so we, the Tea Party movement, had to come up with a formula, with a way to overcome this. Because the only way we're going to get representative government is to have people in the chairs voting on legislation who are us. And as I've told you about the book that I read called White Collar Government, it is a fact that the people voting, whether they're in your city council, in your county commissioners, whether they're in your state legislature, they are not you. They are elitists. They went to elite colleges. They have never worked a job like yours. They don't understand that a $10 increase in your license fee hurts. And until we get people voting on things like that, who understand that, nothing will change. So what happened in Virginia with Eric Cantor and David Brat? Well, what was interesting, if you're like me and you watched the news, okay, all the experts had no explanation. 2 hours before the polls closed, the gentleman that covers the elections for Fox News was talking to Bret Baier and said, yeah, this won't even be close. It's just no contest. So what happened there? You also notice that when they talked about it, they were talking about how, the Tea Party didn't really back this guy. Freedom Works and Tea Party Patriots didn't give him any money at all. They did nothing for this guy. And they tried to play this game that said that the Democrats crossed over. That was a Democrat trick that crossed over. Okay? But only one time did I hear it. And fortunately, Rush Limbaugh played it the next day. But they couldn't get David Brat on TV for whatever reason. They just couldn't get him on. And then Sean Hannity finally had him on. And while Sean Hannity was talking to him, David Brat said, I was overwhelmed by the volunteers, by the people that went door to door and made phone calls for me. And he said, this was a Tea Party victory. They deserve all the credit. Okay? He said those words. Okay? But nobody wanted to play those words over again until Rush Limbaugh played that clip on his show the next day. Because the group that did it was the Richmond Tea Party. The Richmond Tea Party did this. And I knew they were doing this because I met with them in Washington 2 days after our election, our primary. And I told them what we were doing in the David Joyce, Matt Lynch race. And we talked about why we fell short. And I shared this with their leaders. And they talked about their plans, and I knew they were well organized. I've known the leader of the Richmond Tea Party for 3 years because they were one of the first groups to be targeted by the IRS, and I've met with them many times about that issue. So I knew that they were very strong, and I knew they were very serious. So here's the real story that what happened with David Brat. There were many things in play. And most of this you've not heard anywhere. First thing, how many remember what happened in the Virginia governor's race with Ken Cuccinelli? I see Brenda's got her hands up, Lynn's got her hands up, Ann's got her hands up. What happened in the Virginia governor's race is that Cuccinelli, the Tea Party candidate, defeated the Republican establishment candidate in the primary. And he should have won the governorship. But the Republican Party establishment were mad that he won, because a bunch of them were involved in a new railway that was going to go from downtown D.C. out to Dulles Airport. And they owned a lot of land out there. And their candidate was going to vote for that to go through so the taxpayers could build this high-speed rail to Dulles Airport. And so not only did the Republican Party not help Ken Cuccinelli, they sabotaged his campaign. And he lost by, I think, like 3%, right? Something like 3%. The Tea Party people in Virginia noticed. Okay? So that was the first thing. That was their motivation. The second thing was that some of you may remember in 2012 that we used a database system called Our Votes. And it was a system that we paid for that allowed us to do our precinct organizing and things. It's a database program. And we used it in the Romney campaign. And it helped us a great deal. And I called Steve Adler, who I know very well, who's the founder of Our Votes, and I asked him if we could use Our Votes in the Lynch-Joyce campaign. And he couldn't do it, because no one in Ohio was willing to write the check for him to keep his database updated. And so he didn't have good data, so we couldn't use it. So we ended up using voter gravity, and I know many of you suffered through that. It was horrible. But in Virginia, they used Our Votes. And what the Virginia Richmond Tea Party did is they used Our Votes to identify people who thought like we did about gun rights and about social issues and about free enterprise and capitalism. And they went out and targeted people who had never voted in primaries. And so when you heard the big surprise about, well, all these extra people voted, it must have been the Democrats crossing over. It wasn't at all. It was the Tea Party using the tools that we could give them to target people and turn out the vote. But here was the key. And this is going to relate to our Dave Joyce, Matt Lynch race. They also raised $200,000. So they had the ground game, and they had enough money to get their message out. Okay? When we did the Lynch-Joyce campaign, what happened was we had projected, based on the fact that we looked at the registered voters in the district, and we looked at how many of them were guaranteed primary voters. So we looked at people who had voted in the primary 3 times. And the number that we came up with, and quite frankly, the number that the Joyce came up with, was 36,000. We expected 36,000 people to vote in that race. And we did all of our targeting on those 36,000 people. And you did door knocks, as did all the groups in the counties that were in that district. And we knocked on their doors, and we called every one of those people, and we were effective. What happened was that 50,000 people voted. We only talked to 36. Matt Lynch lost by 2,500 votes. 2,501. Out of those 14,000 people, we needed to get 2,501 of them. So what does that tell you about the 36,000? We won that big time, didn't we? Okay? Because we only lost by 10%. which is basically 5% because it goes both ways. All right? So we must have done very well with the 36,000 we targeted. The problem was those 14,000 people who voted didn't have a clue who Matt Lynch was. Because we only raised $75,000. And when it came down to the end, we didn't have the money to buy TV so that you could cover those people that you didn't know were going to vote. And if we had done that, I believe we would have won that race. That's how close it was. So, why you should be excited about Eric Cantor is not because it was a big upset and not because it was a Tea Party win. Because remember, Eric Cantor is just one of a House that's, 435 members of the House? Right? One congressman can't change everything. Why you should be excited about Eric Cantor is because through the Richmond Tea Party and through our efforts nationally, we proved the formula that will restore our representative form of government. That formula means that if we get enough citizens involved and they give small donations, not so that we can raise as much money. Eric Cantor raised $5 million. Okay? And he spent like $2.8 million. And David Brat only raised $200,000. But he won because you just need enough to get your message out. Right? So we don't have to outspend them. We just need enough. That's the lesson. And that's what you should be excited about. Because we just proved it could work. And the dynamics of this are so important. Because if you think about the situation we're in today, the lack of representation we have, the problem has been that if Matt Lynch takes $400,000 from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to run, and he wins, how is he going to be any better than Dave Joyce? Right? If you let special interests write the check, then what's the point? Why should we even work for them? What Matt Lynch is, and what David Brat is one of us. Not an insider. Someone who won't take the bribe. And so the key to this formula is, I say, small donations. Because what we need is not 5 people to give $100,000, right? We need 10,000 people to give 50. Because then you both have $500,000, but I got 10,000 people and you got 5. You like those odds? Think you can win that way? What I want you to think about, and I want to go back to my opening letter on D-Day, that you have to commit to do whatever it takes to defend your freedom. During World War II, some of you probably, but our fathers and grandfathers and grandmothers certainly, went to the factories to build ships and planes and tanks, right? We outproduced the entire world. And that was key to winning the war. But that's not all they did. That's not all they did. The other thing they did is, after working not a 40-hour week, not a 60-hour week, but working 10 or 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, building tanks and ships and planes, when they got their paycheck, they bought war bonds. In World War I, they were called Liberty bonds, because you had to finance the war. It wouldn't have been any good to build those tanks and ships and planes if you didn't have the money, if you couldn't finance the war. And where we are as a movement today is we have the formula. We understand how to win and not compromise our values. We understand how to take back the electoral process and restore representative governance. We have the formula. But we're missing the one key ingredient. We haven't figured out how to fund the war. Many of you are aware that I've been sending this in almost every email for a month. I put this out on your tables last meeting. I've got some more here tonight. Because one of the things I've tried to do is be creative. To find a way to fund our fight that would be acceptable to conservatives and patriots. So I came up with this plan. It's called, this Consumer Energy Options, which is a company that basically brokers gas and electricity. And I signed an agreement with them that allows you to submit your electric bill and your gas bill to these guys, and they will actually look at it and send you a quote back and say, I can save you this amount. And in some cases, Doc Kurz, you guys, they sent back and said, you have a great plan, keep it. Okay? So a no-lose for you and a possible win. When I sent in my gas and electric, they couldn't save me on my electric. They saved me 30% on my natural gas. That's real money. And by doing that, because so many of our people are frightened by the IRS, when you have no need to be, again, you must stand up, as we have, and will continue to stand up to the IRS. But a lot of people are afraid to give directly to us because they don't want to be identified by the IRS. Well, believe me, they already know. They may not be able to find Lois Lerner's emails, but they sure as heck know if you're in a Tea Party. Okay? And it's not because I told them. But I designed this so that you could switch your gas or electric, which you would see no change. It would still be delivered by the same people, just get billed differently. And a small percentage of your bill would go to the We the People convention. I'm talking $3 a month. Okay? And that's not a lot of money. But if 1,000 people do it, that's $3,000 a month. We fought this last primary, and the Ohio Republican Party spent $3.5 million against us. Through the Ohio Citizens PAC, our goal was to raise $25,000 so that we could make at least one robocall for each of our 68 candidates. We raised under $12,000. And $5,000 of that came from one person. I've had this plan out here. I sent it to every Tea Party in the state. I've sent it to every one of you. We have 2,600 people in our Tea Party. They represent 1,400 households. To my knowledge, there are 43,000 active Tea Party members in this state, in the 233 organizations that are out there. 600,000 Ohioans in all the surveys self-identify as being Tea Party supporters. This has been out there for over a month. I haven't had 20 people submit their bills. Not 20. Now, I know, and folks, I know, no one has done more than you, the Portage County Tea Party. You have never let me down. You have always stepped up, no matter what I asked you to do. So I'm not here to criticize, because I have nothing to criticize with the Portage County Tea Party. What I'm here to do is make a point that we've got to get serious about this war. Because what's happening at our state and national level is that we're losing our leaders. I've got people in this movement who are leaders that we cannot afford to lose, who are losing their businesses, losing their marriages, losing their health, because we keep asking them to give everything they've got and more. And we don't have the resources to take those ships and planes and tanks and fight against an army that is, is well funded, that has all the lawyers, has all the advantages. And yet I've just proven to you that we can win. I have no doubt of our victory. None. If we can find the will to fight. We are at a critical stage. If we do not start to build the infrastructure we need, the communications infrastructure, we don't even have the ability to talk to each other the way we should. We don't have the databases. We don't have the resources to help candidates. We don't have the people in place to help Tea Parties be better organized and better managed and better run. Because it comes down to money. It comes down to bonds. Because the people that can do those things don't grow on trees. And there's so few of them already that we need every one of them. And so I want you to understand, first, that we have the formula to win. Second, that we understand who the enemy is and how to defeat them. And third, we just need the will to do it. There is no excuse for every single family in the Portage County Tea Party not to send in this form. Give me a realistic reason why not. Again, they may not be able to save you money. If you live in a co-op, they can't save you money. If you have a propane tank, they obviously can't save you money on natural gas. I get it. But the point is, we need to come up with creative ways to fund ourselves. They just take our tax money. We're not going to do that. We are going to be, like our soldiers today, a volunteer army who's going to give because we believe in the cause. That's why we're here. That's what we've done so far. And that's what's gotten us where we are. But I think you can see, I sure as heck can see, that we got their attention just like Churchill had Hitler's attention. And they're doubling down, aren't they? If you think they lost Lois Lerner's emails, and I got a bridge to sell you to nowhere. Okay? This is a totally lawless administration. They will do anything. As I said before, they will do whatever it takes to defeat us. And we must do the same. I appreciate your patience. I hope this helps you understand the bigger picture. And I hope you'll tell this to other people. Thank you very much.